Reality of existence. It is astonishing how much we take for granted things that are not so obvious if you look at them from a different angle. It seems to be a common knowledge that things do exist and that the reality exists outside of our mind, existed before, and would exist long past after our death. But the question I'm asking now is it really true? You see, our mind is permanently limited by our own imperfect brain. There are lots of documented examples when our perception distorts the view of so-called objective reality. Blind spots, visual and auditory hallucinations, pareidolia and Mandela effect, list can go on. With such variety of self-induced mind tricks, how can we be so sure that our perception of reality was right to begin with? Cogito ergo sum, said once René Descartes. It can be translated as I think, therefore I am. This statement cemented the doubt about reality of the outside world beyond our consciousness in Western philosophy. In order not to fall into the bottomless pit of solipsism, let us assume that the world outside of our mind do exist. Then we have another question: what this true reality is like? According to the experience of philosophers, artists, and some scientists, the reality, if it truly exists, is very absurd, grotesque, and dreadful place. Thus, our brain creates a lot of mistakes of perception in order to keep us alive and operative. Peter Wessel-Zapfe says that there are four mechanisms that trick our brain into viewing the world as a better place: isolation, the subconsciousness pinpointing and repressing of unpleasant emotions, facts, and memories; anchoring, creation of attachments and personal values among objects of reality, for example, family, close friends, or even favorite flavor of ice cream; distraction, averting your focus from unpleasant things and focusing on something more familiar and close; sublimation, turning negative feelings into work, creativity, or aesthetic consumption; drug and alcohol abuse, pop culture obsession, sex for the purpose of pleasure or recreation, and hunger for power also falls into this category. According to Zapfe, in a state when we are depressed, upset, or confused, we see the world as it is or extremely close to it. Nevertheless, our existence seems like never-ending journey to escape from pain and suffering. Most of the religions have some sort of afterlife that assures endless pleasure or connection with some divine deity. Then, with the crisis of Christianity on the West, suffering in the name of God became irrelevant, and people started to look for comfort and safety even more. Despite the fact that almost any physical or mental suffering can be adapted to, we are still afraid of failure, pain, or loss of something valuable. Our desire to have things and fear of losing them is a great example of anchoring. It comes to the absurd degree when people start to divide and own literal space. For example, everyone has their own home, country of origin, personal and workspace. Martin Heidegger, in his essay Building, Dwelling, Thinking, wrote that people can't function in the eternal space that the universe is. Therefore, we divide space into countries, states, regions, cities, streets, homes, rooms, etc. It's essential to our mental health. That's why looking into the darkness can be so creepy, especially for children who are more in touch with our animal nature. In the dark, the borders of our space become loosened and it invokes our natural fear of unknown and possible danger from it. That's another point about our existence. We like something certain and known. Transient and liminal states are naturally seems at least unpleasant to us, like puberty or that feeling when you just can't fall asleep and stay in between the dream and reality. There is even a term, liminal space, to describe some usually closed and poorly lighted spaces that make us feel uneasy. They seem eerie and to some extent even unnatural yet familiar. Some compare this to looking into the abyss or an open space. It's funny how we often depict outer space as this beautiful, colorful, and stunning place when it's just like that, the space, an ever-extending, colorless matter of the universe itself, cold, dark, and soundless with occasional stars as the only sources of light. It's also worth mentioning that people start to think about those things mostly when being alone. In general, people seems to be more comfortable having others around. Humans' interaction serve as the distraction from the loneliness we face on our daily basis. It's not a coincidence that most of philosophers were loners. We can be close to touching the outside world when we are alone and nothing distracts us. The fact that the most people can't stand loneliness for too long only proves that we can't experience our reality in a direct way. Even distorted by our perception, it still can be unbearable. With people around, we are not alone to face reality, and we feel easier about it. Common enemy unites people. During some natural disasters, people tend to be closer, but when it all ends, they turn back to their regular selfishness. So let's sum up. People can't give solid proofs concerning the existence of reality outside of our brain. Therefore, we assume that what we perceive as reality is true. To exist, we need to constantly trick ourselves into viewing the world as a better place than it actually is. Undivided space and uncertainty frightens people, so they try to avoid everything connected with it. The common enemy, which is reality, unites people with evolution or with the help of technologies. I think our perception of reality will become more clear and vivid. I don't know if this will force us to leave our human body, but I sure hope that when we finally take a look at the objective reality, we wouldn't want to come back to the dark ages of ignorance.